What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to your Financial Dose, the channel that you need to subscribe to if you want to learn more about personal finance. So what I'm going to be talking about today is actually a pretty interesting topic, or a topic that I take at heart because it impacts all of us. And that is, what is the most fundamental problem with capitalism? Now, let's not get me wrong, I am a capitalist at heart. I think that it is one of the best economic systems to reward innovation, to motivate people to do more and strive to achieve levels that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. However, there are a few things that I don't like about capitalism, and they go beyond the simple facts that there is income inequality, that there is wealth accumulations at the highest level in, if you want to say, the one percenters. The fact that not everybody has equal opportunities depending on where they're born. Or the fact that the rich just tend to look out for themselves in general. No, the problem that I want to talk about today goes way beyond all of these seemingly big problems, but nonetheless, this one that I'm going to talk about remains bigger. But before we get into this big problem, we need to do a quick economic crash course. And we need to talk about GDP. So what GDP is the monetary value of all the goods and services that are produced within a country over a certain period of time. Usually on an annual basis, that's what we would compare year over year. So if GDP growth was 3% in 2010, and then another 3% in 2011, and then 2% in 2012, well, we'll say, oh, GDP in 2012 fell by 1%. And this would be bad. And GDP is composed of government spending, consumer spending, investments, and net export. So just to understand how this formula works, if the government invests in building a highway, this would increase your GDP. If the consumers or the citizens of that country invest their money, it could be in stocks, it can be in real estate, this would increase the level of GDP as well. Or if private enterprise goes and develops a hydroelectric dam up north, or anywhere, that would also increase GDP. If Canada produces 10 bushels of corn in a year, and we sell these 10 bushels of corn for a total of $100, or $10 per bushel, but then we need to buy, say, 5 barrels of oil, which costs us overall $120, well, we're at a net export value of minus 20. So in the GDP formula, you would have the investments plus the government spending plus consumer spending minus that $20 of deficit when we're looking at the exports in isolation. On the other hand, if a country exports more money than it imports, then this net export value is going to be positive, and this will contribute to increasing GDP. And in the capitalist system, continuous growth is rewarded. So for a country to achieve continuous growth every year is very positive. And this can make sure that they can keep their currency at higher valuations, or that they can keep their interest rate up where they want it to be. It gives a country more flexibility, just as it would give a stock more flexibility, or it would increase the stock price if the stock beats the analyst's estimate of their earnings every quarter. So if analysts say that, oh, Apple should make $10 million this quarter and make $2 million worth of profit, but they actually make $11 million of revenue and $4 million of profit, Apple just became more valuable of a company because they could make more money and their stock price goes up. But if for whatever reason they still grow, but they grow less than what is predicted, their stock will go down. So this is just two examples to show how continuous growth is heavily rewarded in our capitalist system and how it's expected. And this, my friends, is where the problem is. We are striving to achieve continuous growth in a world with a finite amount of resources. You want to grow in perpetuity, but the resources that we have do not. We will extract all of the bauxite from the mines to produce aluminum, and at some point we won't have any more. And if our recycling processes aren't efficient enough to reuse the produced aluminum an infinite amount of times, then how is this achievable? Once we pump up all the oil reserves and empty them dry, where are we supposed to get our oil? When we mine all the lithium mines to produce all these batteries that go in electric cars and consumer electronics, what are we supposed to do to produce more batteries? There's always the argument of technological innovation that will come in at the last moment and save us, and we'll be able to grow food with a very low amount of nutrients required, or we'll be able to invent a new technology where we won't need lithium in batteries, but we'll use something else, or we'll harvest the energy of the sun, or we'll always find a solution. But at the same time, there's a fundamental problem. We do not have an infinite amount of resources. And if you think about, oh, well, we'll just go into space and we'll pull resources off of asteroids, but that just means that we're bringing more resources into the Earth when the Earth was not designed to process this high amount of excess resources. And even with us humans living on the Earth now, using only what is within the boundaries of our planet, we have huge issues when it comes to climate change, for example. But that's a topic for a whole other video. And an interesting way to look at this is, say, you have a paper towel. How long after you throw away that paper towel does it re-become a paper towel? And to be honest with you, I can't even answer that. I have no idea. Once you throw the paper towel away, it goes in a landfill, it stays there for hundreds of years, and I don't see how it will ever become a paper towel again unless we plant trees on the landfill. And with all the nutrients of the decayed garbage that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, then the tree can absorb it, and then we can cut it down and make another paper towel. And the reason why I like to use the paper towel example is that it has been created for the sole purpose of catering to human laziness and to pick up cat vomit. Because I've tried to do that with a cloth, and it's not a very pleasant experience. But all joking aside, you do understand the problem. We tend to create non-stop. We are rewarded for creating non-stop and innovating and growing and producing and consuming when we do not have an infinite amount of resources. And a very ingenious way that capitalists have been able to ingrain this in society is through advertising. Consumption is rewarded. If you live in a suburban neighborhood, the typical home with a barbecue and the pool in the backyard, and then one of your neighbors gets a fancy new car, you will feel inferior to them. Not everyone, but this is what the marketers, the advertisers want you to feel. They want you to feel inferior to your neighbor. They just bought a brand new car, you need to go buy a brand new car. They just got a bigger house, they just redid their kitchen, you need to redo your kitchen. You just got the brand new phone, well, now you feel like a king because all your friends, oh wow, that's such a nice, great phone, I wish I could afford a phone like that. And then you were revered for being able to afford a new phone, a new laptop, whatever it is. And it's so fascinating how they've been able to convince us that through consumption, we will achieve status, we will find happiness, and we will be able to do more. But at the end of the day, we all know that this isn't the case. And there have been many studies on this. How much money do you need to truly be happy? What actually creates true happiness? And again, this is way beyond the topic or the scope of this video, but what they were saying is a salary of about $80,000 is what you would need to be happy if you live alone, if you're single. And $80,000 may seem like a lot for many people, but for every dollar that you make above that $80,000 limit, or whatever the threshold is in your country, because every country varies depending on the cost of goods, you will not necessarily be happier. And this could be simply because to make more money, you need a more stressful job. And this stress will counteract the benefit that you would get from having more money. And it may be fun to be able to change cars every year, or to live on top of a hill somewhere and overlook the city while you eat breakfast and drink your tea in the morning, or coffee, whatever. Once the initial wow factor wears off, what are you left with? You're left with yourself. And if you're not happy with yourself because you're under stress, because you've had to have done things that you aren't too proud of to get ahead in life, well, does that really make you a happy person? And again, this is very subjective, but this is what the marketers and the advertisers and the companies have all been able to do, is to convince us that through spending, we will be happier. And that is one of the great ways that they can guarantee achieving continuous growth, at least for the short term. But how long is this going to keep going? How long will this be sustainable for? And that is a very good question. A question that I frankly can't even answer. But something that I can say is there would be a way to fix this. There is a way to change the GDP metric so that it is not focused solely on monetary inputs, but more on social inputs. There's nothing wrong with keeping the formula very logical. It's mathematically correct. But at the same time, we do not have an infinite amount of resources. So maybe adding metrics like a happiness index, which have been worked on in many countries where they created an actual happiness index, where they send out surveys for their population, and depending on what they answer, they score, anywhere on a scale from 1 to 10 or whatever it is. And if you can integrate a happiness index or integrate the level of accessibility to healthcare that the population has into the GDP metric overall, this can sort of mitigate the continuous monetary economic growth and sort of allow social factors to contribute to this growth. And obviously the capitalists won't be happy with this because they're leaving money on the table. We still reward a country for growing based on this new GDP metric, but they're not making more money per se. So where does that leave them? But at the same time, the problem with capitalism is we always want more. We have greed. We need more to feel satisfied, to feel fulfilled. And that is a problem. So I think that over the next 20 years, huge changes will have to be made within the system to make sure that it remains sustainable for the long run. And something as simple or as complex, depending on where you're coming from, as adding social metrics into the GDP equation should help create a base to then build upon and move forward. And that is one of the biggest problems in capitalism. The fact that this GDP formula has not been revised in a very long time. Well guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the topic for this video today. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about my thoughts on capitalism and what I think the biggest problem about capitalism is. And maybe you guys could offer solutions as well, or solutions that you think may work to sort of alleviate this problem. Again, if you enjoy the content that I create, feel free to like the video and subscribe. It helps me a lot. And I hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next one.